Welcome to Fashion Neurosis, Christian Louboutin.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what you're wearing today and why you chose these particular clothes?
I can try, but I have to say it's been a very complicated decision because I knew that I was going to see you lie down on the couch. So it was a lot of factors that I had to take into consideration, which I never do in general. I've never been lying on a couch, and I never saw you with that conscious. So it's been really one of the most difficult decisions that I ever had to do in my life, I have the
Sorry.
feeling. But anyway, I thought, does it have to have a meaning? Probably it should. Should I be natural, thinking of not thinking and going the way I was? Gave me a headache just thinking in that direction. So it was really, really difficult. So bottom line, I came as I was, and I arrived from Manchester, so I took the train in that outfit. The only thing that I did is that I changed my t-shirt in case I had to speak of something, so I put a t-shirt with a meaning. And
What does it say?
I don't remember what it says, but it says something. It says life has a purpose. I don't remember. It's a quote by Dolly Parton. That's the one thing I do remember. And it's a quote which I liked. And as I love Dolly Parton, I thought a good quote of Dolly Parton would make it on a t-shirt. So I have this t-shirt under, which is my protective t-shirt. Otherwise, again, I thought probably let's try to have a meaning. And again, I never think that way when I dress up. In general, I go to a pair of shoes and I'm thinking what could go with that pair of shoes. That's kind of about it. But this time I thought, okay, I have these pairs of jeans which were given to me. Then the shirt, I have no idea where it's coming from, but it looked like a jacket and it's very warm and coming from France. But just before that, I was in Brazil. I was really concerned by being cold and not catching a flu or something, which I started to do, as you can hear maybe with my nose taken. And so I actually really looked at my shoes. And I thought a shoe is really a shape before anything else. So I have these shoes that I did, which has a bit of a clowny shape. So I thought, I hate clowns, but I like clown shapes. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have my cloudy shape moccasin. And it's all the same color.
I've never seen you in a shape of shoe like that. Are they new, these shoes, or?
Not really new. I mean, I have them for a few years, but they're still new to me because I barely wear them. I love them, but I barely wear them. And so they're 2 or 3 or 4 years ago.
They're almost quite minimalist in your style. Like the line is, it's like you've drawn it on. I really like them. They're wonderful.
It's like a sketch. It's like an unfinished sketch. And yes, so it's really a concentration just on the last. And the rest is almost if you take a pen or pencil, I don't know when it's when you have the eraser
pencil.
with it, pencil.
Yeah.
So if you take a pencil and you take a 4B, which is already a greasy one, and then you almost sharpen with it.
Yeah.
So yes, it's just lines. The line is reinforced by an outline of a different color.
Yeah, it's really nice. And
Thank you.
I always associate you with color a lot. And today your color is in your socks. So it's quite a kind of muted color palette for you. And from my position, your socks match perfectly the soles of your shoes. You have like this red and white herringbone sock.
So you have a good point of view.
Yes.
Angle of view, a view angle.
A very good vantage.
I always need to have something with colors. I never wear black, apart from if it's a black tie or funerals. which often looks like the same. And but I never wear black. I wear colors in general. But if I don't wear colors, I always have something in colors. For instance, everything which is dark that I had made, such as suits or things like that, the lining would be in color. I can't imagine myself surrounded by black or draped in black.
I
It would
remember
really
that
give me the creeps.
because when I first started my brand, or a certain point, I used to give you jumpers and they were always black, and you very politely showed enthusiasm. And at a certain point you said, I don't really wear black. And then I sort of had an epiphany. But do you remember
Black with something works. Black all
Yeah.
over black. Also, when I'm in black in general is because I gain weight. So being in black for me is being in the worst shape that I've been in general. So I associate black with hiding. Or I don't hide, or I don't like hiding.
And do you remember the first time in your life you found a piece of clothing that made you feel different?
I would not remember that moment, but because it probably happened very, very at a very, very early age. I do remember always liking to dress up, but when I look at pictures of me as a child, I see things and I'm thinking, how could I be dressed like that? How come I didn't scream or something? It's so weird that when you like so much to dress up, you see clothes of you on you, on a child, which is you, and you're thinking, what was I thinking to let me myself to be dressed in such a way? And I guess it's a very nice thing of, I like the idea that I was no conscious, I couldn't care less of clothes as a child, as an early child, because now I see having daughters age 10, they've been concerned about what they dress for years. I have no clue what I was wearing, or I really don't remember being conscious of I like this or I don't like this. Age 7, 8, 9, or 10, I immediately became conscious of, let's say, appearing with clothes around 11. I remember dressing up, that's for sure. And I remember, for instance, I was checked. The only mirror that we had in the apartment in Paris, at my parents' apartment, was in the bedroom of my parents. So there was a big mirror next to the bed of my parents. So I would look at myself just before going to school. And I do remember looking at myself, thinking that I looked good, but it's not the first thing, but the first look. But let's say it's the first time that I do remember something connected to how I was dressed. And I say, okay, now I'll go to school. And my mother says, you're not doing at school like that.
Really?
I say, what do you mean? She said, no, you're not dressed properly to go to school. You have to change. And I said, no, why? So we had an argument. So I had a pair of shorts. I had Gégène is those very pointy shoes, laced up shoes that you had from the 50s, you know.
Oh, like winkle pickers.
I don't know in English. Gégène in French, those rock and roll shoes in suede, you know, red shoes. They were maroon. I had a tank top of panel velvet.
Wow.
I had round, kind of inflatable fluo yellow glasses with a necklace of that I made of green fuzzer, 2 colors, light green, lime green, and darker green. So my mother said, you're not going dressed like that. I said, what do you mean? She says, you need socks with these shoes. You need socks. You will not go without socks. So, ma'am, it doesn't go with my look. I don't want to wear socks. She obliged me to wear socks. So I said, okay. She was going dramatic if I was not wearing those socks. I put the socks left the apartment, and 5 minutes after I removed the socks, I was at school like that. So that's probably the first time I do remember discussing a look.
Wow.
And it was a big argument, socks or no socks.
Your mother sounded like a remarkable person. She allowed you to leave home and live with a much older man when you were a teenager. Do you think her trust in your decision making was part of what's made you such a good decision maker?
I think that, my mother has been very instrumental in my behavior, but also in my character and in my confidence. So I think that trusting people is very important. Trust with love is a very good mix. It's a very, very good combo. And she loved me, so she trusted me. And she trusted me, so she loved me, and she let me be the way I was. And so having no boundaries somehow is exposing yourself to your own boundaries instead of the boundaries of which are not belonging to you, but which are belonging to your parents, to society, to your family, to your siblings, whatever. So I had to create my own boundaries. I think it's been very good for me, and it's been very good for her, let's say for the family, because she didn't have to be afraid. She didn't have to take any decision, which was probably boring. And again, I refer to her because I think that I'm a little bit like that with my kids. So yes, I think it's good to be trustful towards your children. Then I guess it's, first of all, of course it is personal, but also it depends so much of the child's character still. But I guess that it's really a combo. You do understand naturally that according to your child character, if you can, or if you decide to trust your child and let it go, and which means that I never had a downfall with my family.
Yeah.
I never had this age, which is like teenager, which is called in French l'âge bête, the stupid age, where you hate everything, you hate your parents, you hate everything which is said, you roll up your eyes, and you hate the world, the adult, everyone is so stupid, or whatever. I never had that. I mean, I had that with many people, but that not with my parents, at least. And definitely that with my mother.
That's so unusual. I mean, the description, her reaction to your outfit is such a good example that she must have been concerned about your feet getting cold or something instead of, I thought you were going to say, she said you can't wear those clothes out, and instead she's wanting you to put some socks on.
Yes.
Which is
No. She was really concerned by the
adorable.
lock of socks.
Because
it would have looked really bad.
And then after her death, you discovered that she'd had a love affair with a young Egyptian man, and that you're the result of that love affair. And I always remember, we've been friends for 30 years, and I remember asking you once, do you have Arabic blood? Because I lived in Morocco when I was a child, and I've always had a strong affinity to that country, and you just said, are you crazy? And then you told me the story that your sister told you that this young man was your father, and I wondered if you'd ever met him and whether your artistic brilliance comes through him.
It's interesting that the few people I have been discussing the discovery of my biological father being Egyptian, women would ask if I wanted or if I had met that person. Never men. Men have never asked me, my male friends have never asked me about if I wanted or if I had met that person. The reality is that, no, I have never met the guy, and neither felt the need of meeting. It's really the story of my mother. And And I am the result of that story. So I'm very happy of the existence of that man. My father has been my father who educated me, who was next to me. So it's really the story of my mother, and I think that it's nice if one day I feel that I should meet or try to meet that person, I will do it. I have no problem with that. But it needs to come from a feeling, not from just curiosity. And the only thing, and I think that it's way too vain, the only thing which kind of makes me want to maybe meet that person is that many times if I have to have my photography taken, so by a photographer always tell me, you have a beautiful smile.
Yeah.
My sister told me that was the first time she met that guy in our apartment in Paris. He say hello to her with a beautiful smile and he left by the window.
Wow.
The day after, same scenario. Beautiful smile and he flew by the window, 6th floor, but above on the roof. And the scenario went on and on and on. And so I guess that I have the smile of that man. But again, it's the only reason where I would like to maybe see that man is just to see if we have exactly the same smile, which I think we have. But it's not enough of a reason to actually, drag thing and whatever to meet someone. But I think that I have the smile of that man. That's the thing which we have in common.
It's a nice thought, really, to have this thing that
It's
lovely thing.
I am conscious that it's a very vain thought, but again, it's funny because really photographers always tell me that. So I've always been thinking, what is that smile they're talking about? And then when my sister told me that,
Yeah.
I immediately thought, okay, so now I know where is my smile coming from.
Well, a smile is such an uplifting, it's such a connecting thing. So it doesn't seem like vanity. It seems like some sort of alliance that it's a lovely description. And you do have this wonderful smile that makes everyone start falling around laughing immediately, which is one of your many qualities.
Well, I'm happy about that smile. But again, I am conscious that entering a thing where I would want to meet that man who happened to be my father, but that I've never met, would probably make me enter into a different zone. And if I had time, if I was kind of empty, or if I was looking for myself somewhere, somehow, or if I wanted to have a mission in my life that I don't have or whatever, maybe it would be a nice thing to do. But I'm quite busy and I'm quite happy. So it wouldn't be, I don't look for more happiness that I have. And I definitely don't look for more time-consuming anything
Yeah.
that my life at that moment now. So, but again, I was very happy for my mother because she met that man. She was in her late 30s, and I thought that it's a beautiful story. And I know, as a fact, in my family, I know that when you're a product of love, it can go both ways. You may be adored, or you may be hated. You may be the child may be that person who broke that love story between two people. One person left because of that child. Or the opposite, that child represents this huge love between two people. And then you're becoming the nest of that, le creuset of that story. In my case, I am the positive side. I received all the love that she could not give anymore to that man who literally fled when I was born. And but it could happen different way. Someone disappeared because you were born. But thank God, it's been very much the opposite for me. So I own to that man to be born, but I own to my father who raised me to be alive. That's to be alive after being born, let's say.
Yeah. What an amazing family you have. I know your parents are both dead now, but it's kind of an amazing story of really good values and really good feeling towards each other. Your parents sound like they had to be.
I was always surprised when I was a kid when I was bringing back people in the apartment of my family. It could be boyfriend, it could be girlfriend, it could be anyone who was going to sleep. And they were often surprised. And I was like, why would they be surprised? It's a very random apartment. It's nothing special there. And I realized that they were surprised by the warmth, qu'on appelle ça, la bienvenue, the welcoming, the easy welcoming. I would come at 4:00 in the morning. I didn't have the key. And I had to whistle. We were living on the 6th floor without an elevator. So floor number 4, I started to... And then before the 6th floor, the door was open and my mother would have opened the thing. But she never accepted that I would have the key. She wanted to be woken up anytime. So people were always surprised to see someone say, oh, I saw you free. Okay, so take the bigger bed. And she would go in my bed and give her bed, which was bigger. And so people were surprised. It was natural to me. You know, you're three people. It's easier to sleep at 3 people in a bigger bed than having your mother sleeping in a big bed and you 3 in a small bed. So for her, it was simple. So for me, it was simple too. But I saw that the simplicity was seeming very complex to most people. But for a long time, I did not understand why. And then after I started to understand why. I still think she was right. If you're free, take the bigger bed.
It sounds like me and Jimmy, my son, who's your godson. I'm just so happy to see him, even if it is at 3 a.m. I'd rather, open the door and I'd rather he woke me up than end up in any kind of difficult situation.
Yeah. You're a good mother.
You're a great godfather.
I would be happy of you as and my mom.
Okay. That means a lot. And I read somewhere that you'd said it depends on whether you want to feel dressed or undressed, on which shoe you choose to start the day. Can you describe what that means?
First of all, it's more having to see with women's shoes, I would say. There is this thing on women's shoes, not so much on men's shoes. It's a very, very different topic, men's shoes and women's shoes. But for women, yes, shoes can undress you, or shoes can definitely dress you, and it's a different pair of shoes. It's different kind of shoes. But when I have to dress up, when I wake up, the first thing I'm thinking is the shoes. So I guess it's an extension of how you're going to want to feel during the day. And so that's why, for instance, when I am designing shoes, I really am conscious at one point to do something which is dressy or something which is undressy. I would say undressy is to kind of be able to exhibit yourself, and dressy is to basically wear a mask. So some shoes are like a mask, and some shoes are like the opposite of a mask. And I think it's more daring, of course, to be undressed. And saying that, I don't say that you want to be undressed all the time, but you want to be undressed for everyone, or you want to be undressed in front of everyone, or you want to be undressed in the morning. I mean,
That's a brilliant description.
Moods are changing all the time. But yes, it's different pairs of shoes. So when I am designing, I have this in my mind. Sometimes I look at my work when I'm designing, I'm thinking, okay, this is Christian, the macho side of me. This is the stylist. This is another shoe. This is the friend of women. And this is sometimes even the woman who speak there. And it's different characters. And I know that it doesn't shatter in my brain, but they're almost literally in different part of my brain. You have different characters. So sometimes I look at, for instance, I look at one design that I did and I think, okay, it's, if I am a guy and the girl who is wearing that is going out with me, I may say, darling, do you mind to change the shoes? Something doesn't work for me. I understand that kind of macho point of view. And the stylist would say, no, own it. It's you, it's your decision or whatever. I understand also the designer fight, but sometimes it's not the same character. I respect every character. I'm trying to respect every character in myself as I try always very consciously to respect people in general.
God, that's so interesting, like having different characters. It is like a play, who gets the upper hand and why? Why do they decide when does the macho win and when does the vulnerable person win? And so interesting. Is there something that you remember wearing to be consciously attractive to somebody?
For the longest time, the idea of sexy was very alien to me, and I never was interested into the world of sexy. And it looks strange because suddenly a big part of my work is considered sexy, if not ultra sexy, if not over sexy, if not exaggeratedly sexy, if not violently sexy, if not vulgarly sexy, if not anything, but still sexy. A big part of my life, I was very alien to sexy. I had no clue. And if I was dressing up, I was always to try to look pleasant. Sexy was not a word that I was using. And actually, as a teenager, in my 20s too, I had a kind of aberration of sexy. I was scared by sexy. I never had any sexual problem. I had sex all my life with different people. So it's not about having problem with sex, but the idea of sexy or being obsessed by sexy or wanting to look sexy never occurred to me. Ever, ever, ever.
And before you established your brand, you worked for Roger Vivier. And I always remember you telling me this story about how you asked him a question. It was something to do with someone's age, and he'd replied, "Oh, our age."
Our age, yes.
But you were a teenager and he was
Oh, yeah.
80. What did you learn from him?
I was 24, he was 80 years old. And he said, our age. I was like, but Roger, we have a little bit of a difference in age. And he looked very shocked, that I would say, that we had a little bit of a difference. And he was right, because we were pretty similar. Well, I guess, 24 plus 80, it's 104. So we were in our 50s, both of us. So we were meeting in our kind of early 50s. That's how we felt, at least. But I learned that, really, it's funny how much I remember, because I have been having friends, multiple friends, older than me for a big part of my life. So it's interesting to see that when you're still a kid and you see older people, what is the most shocking is that as a child, you really see a border, a very fat border between teenagers, let's say young people, and old people. And old people starts at 35 when you're like 14, 15, 16 or whatever. So it's interesting to see that. To me, it was fascinating to see old people, meaning someone who was 35, jumping on bed and screaming and farting. It's like, this is for kids. I'm not going to be like that when I'm going to be that old. And then, of course, you realize that there is not so much change. So at one point, you realize that you don't know when the change is arriving. You know, you end up being a child trapped in a kind of slightly older skin. But as long as the child is there, it's great. And the child, in some people, has a hard time to disappear, which is a good thing. There's nothing wrong of keeping the child, your inner child, yourself. And but as a child, I was very conscious that I was looking at adults thinking, adults don't act like adults. So what is it to be an adult? Because one day I will become an adult, but I cannot be like that. Jumping on a bed and saying silly things and being very happy about all of it and breaking the bed and like whatever. And and of course, you know, I could jump on that couch very easily if I was not lying on the couch.
I always remember coming to stay with you in Portugal when you had a very small, tiny little house, and when Jimmy was about 6 or 7, I was trying to find him, and then I opened the door, and it was pitch black in this tiny room, and you and Jimmy were dancing like maniacs to Mika turned up
Yes.
top volume. So, and it just felt like, oh, he's fine, he's safe. That's the best thing that could be going on. It was.
But I think that dance is such an important thing. And I'm so happy to see that now people, children, have really less problem, if not to say no problem, to dance.
Yes, I totally agree. I know you've told this story before and to me many times, but can you tell me about the Red Soul and how it happened?
How it started?
Yeah.
Well, it started very simply. It's because I draw and I put colors on my drawings most of the time. Now I start to be a little bit lazy. Sometimes I don't put colors. But most of the time I was putting colors. I still put colors. Anyway, and what is important for me is to have the first drawings, the primary drawings, to be the reflection of the real shoe needs to be as close as the first drawing. And when there is a small border between the reality and your fantasy as a sketch, it's a great satisfaction. Because of course a sketch is only a sketch, so you have to adaptate it to a real life as a three-dimensional. But if you remain quite very close and faithful to your primary drawing, it gives you such an excitement and such a satisfaction. So anyway, I was sketching, and then the shoes that I was sketching were inspired by the kind of serigraphy of Andy Warhol, so pop colors, etc., with block of colors. And then, so one shoe was a reflection of one of the painting of Andy Warhol, which is called Flowers.
Yeah.
And but I never look at things. I have them in my mind, and then I'm thinking of them, and then do it my way. So I had this painting in mind, and it was flowers. So I did the Mary Jane with a high heel, pointy last, and it had a big buckle, and the buckle was a flower. And everything was full of colors and different colors. So when the shoe became a shoe, I looked at it, but I always have the sketch next to it. And for some reason, the sketch was better than the real shoe. The shoe fitting was good. The flower looked good. But when I was turning it, somehow from the back, there was a lot of black, and there was no black in my designs. No black, no white, no beige, no brown, no taupe, no gray, no kind of dark colors, etc. So anyway, and so the person who had tried the shoe, it was in Italy, had finished to try all the shoes during the day. So she was painting her nails with a nail polish. So I thought, okay, what about if that shoe had no black, had a color instead of black, which eats the rest? So I grabbed her nail polish, and after a little bit of a fight, because she had two nails, she went, I grabbed the nail polish and I painted the sole red. So it was not to add a color, it was a bit to add the color, but also to have that black disappearing. And then suddenly I could find my drawing again. The drawing became alive. And I thought, okay, that works. So it needs to be full of colors. And as I am a little bit basic, and it was around Christmas, I thought, okay, I should do the soul green because it's around Christmas. And then I put the first soul green and I looked at it and I said, doesn't work the way red was working. No. I have to start by red. And then I ended up sticking to red because even if you don't like colors, red is an element which exists. On someone who is dressed in black, the lips are going to be red. The nails may be red. So even if you don't supposedly wear colors, you'll have an element of red very often. So I stuck to red. And now I'm stuck with red, happily stuck with red.
It's such a good story. I get goosebumps every time I hear it because it's so kind of, it could have so easily not happened. And it's such an example of your genius. The way you decide on what you choose and, from your earliest decisions, what you talked about, your mother and making these, you just have this unerring instinct and you notice what works. And I love that story and how it transpired. It's just, and you always see what's, like grabbing the nail varnish in life. You're very much that person that you see there's something missing and, oh, there it is. This is what's needed. And it's very simple, but so inspired.
I do sometimes think that I have, without being conscious of it, I have personal ingrained mantras. Like, for instance, you have the glass which is half empty or half full. To me, I always see the half full, and I always see the good side of it, of things in general. But again, I think, okay, it's probably at the beginning a nature, but then after it becomes a decision. You, at one point, decide of things. And so naturally, I think I'm a very optimistic person. But then I learned to understand that it was somehow a quality. And when you understand that, kind of stick to it.
Yeah.
And yes, out of dark things, I can always see an end of a tunnel. Out of dark thing, I will always see the brightness somewhere. And it probably helped me many, many times.
Yeah. I suppose it's practice. I remember you telling me I always wake up happy. And as I always wake up in a bit of a gloom, I thought, this is really something. And I thought about that quite a lot. And I do things to shift my mood purposefully because it's a real blessing to be able to have that, be inclined towards that, because it saves all this kind of climbing up from the abyss where someone like me often starts off. And then I suppose it's a bit like exercise. The more you are happy and know how to make yourself happy, the more you are happy.
Yeah, I think energies are important. As much as I don't believe in God, I really believe in energy and how much you are driving your energies and you are attracting energies. So if you are negative energy, everything is becoming negative, or you receive the negativeness from all over. If you are really more positive with positive energy, it works the same way. And I really think that it's, again, I'm kind of serious about that. I've understood that it's a serious matter to decide to be happy. You are probably naturally happy, but then it's something that you have to cultivate, because it's such a nice thing to feel happy. And also, for instance, I do remember being with Louise, that you know very well, my ex-boyfriend, and we were in a car on the way to the airport, and he was screaming because we were missing the flight. And at one point, he looks at me and he said, "But you're so calm. Why?" I said, "First, you don't leave me any room to be screaming. You scream for 5 people. But also, it doesn't make any difference. If we miss the plane, we miss the plane. It's not by screaming and being hysterical that suddenly, like, the Red Sea is going to open and the car is going to go all the way to the airport. So there's nothing we can do about it. So why being so miserable?" And I thought, and he looked at me if I was crazy. I said, "Well, we have no power over that. So why do you give yourself a headache? It's not going to change anything." And I think that once you realize that you have no power on things which are kind of negative, forget about it.
Yeah.
That's to feel bad or to be hysterical about that doesn't make a difference. As long as you have empathy, which is a very different thing.
Yeah.
I think that otherwise, to be fully forced, enraged about things, doesn't help.
Yeah. No, it's a waste. A shoe is where you can show something secret about yourself, especially if you're a bit introverted. And it's almost like underwear. Which is invisible. But with shoes, you can kind of indicate something. And I wondered how you connect so successfully to this thing that women really want.
Well, I think I do know a bit about women because I was raised by women. And but also, I was a little boy when my sister were older. And funny enough, so when my father was not there, I was the only boy in the village, as they say, in Little Britain. I was the only boy in the apartment. But I was a small one. So I was not a male figure. So I could see women in the world of women. When you are not considered as a man, as a male figure, but like as a little puppet, as a pet, or whatever, women together are acting the way they're acting between women. Suddenly my father would appear, or like a grown-up man would appear, and they were different. And but for the most time, I was by myself with the harem of women in the apartment. So I could see it all. And I had every story, the period, the boyfriend, how you get fat and not fat, and whatever, the underwear, the fish. But what, I had it all. And I never was neither shocked. I was always amused, but I had the feeling to be looking at a play. Being like in a Cukor movie, or like, with all those stories.
You draw the most beautiful feet with a high step, and I wondered is there a foot shape that you find completely impossible?
A foot shape or a shoe shape?
Well, a foot shape, really, something you
Foot
find
shape.
hard to dress.
Foot shape difficult is really what I call the pizza foot, which is when the foot is really flat, with little of an ankle, so slightly straight behind, if you do the profile.
Like an L.
No curve, like a 90 degrees équerre kind of style. And then the foot really large by the front, which happens often when people have this position since they are kids, like sitting on their feet, like almost like, let's say, a Japanese sit, where you're just sitting and you rise a thing, because it engages the muscles and the bones to stabilize the entire body weight on the front of the foot. So it develops a larger foot in the front.
God, that's so interesting.
And it's complicated. Then after, it's not that pretty, but then after also it's very difficult to do a shoe, which is not a flat shoe, where when you put it on a heel with an arch, that it doesn't open the shoe. It's not a good look for a foot
Yeah.
once a foot is dressed or even a bit undressed, but elevated.
And what do you think of the ankle boot? Nick Cave said he hates them.
Yes, I know that Dick say that, Cave say that.
That's a big-
I understand. I understand because I don't have a problem with ankle boots, but I have a problem with Napa unlined ankle boot. I do remember speaking often to this guy who was a great journalist, musician called Vivier in the 70s in Paris. He was the journalist for music. Great guy, very 70s look. And he has those boots, not lined, so like gloves. I could see his feet touching all the leather. So you could see the feet molded on the boot. And I was really disgusted. I could barely find anything. He was very interesting, but I could find anything he would say. I would be reserved because it looked, I don't know, something looked weird because of his feet on his boots. Something looked always fake. I mean, I could not take him seriously because I looked at his boots and I was like, how can you be seriously interesting having those animated fingers inside those Napa boots? I was horrified by that. And so I have a problem with boots where you do see the body of the shoe, where you do see the bone. I don't like to see bones in shoes. So when it's on a boot, you do see a big part of the foot, and I find it really disgusting. So yes, I do not like ankle boots where they are lined and they are in Napa, and when you do see the foot inside. You know, we have this thing in French called, it's a terrible expression, called moule bite. So mold dick. So it's when people have those underwears, you know, swim underwear, and you see everything.
Oh, yeah.
So poutre apparente or moule bite, when the dick is molded, you do see the dick, you do see the balls, etc.
Here we call it budgie smugglers.
Budgie smugglers.
Yes, as though you've got a budgie down your trousers and you see all these outline of these strange shapes.
Voila. So I have a problem with budgie smugglers on the foot. Around the ankle, it's fine, but on the foot, budgie smuggler looks really bad.
Yeah.
So everything which is budgie smuggler on the foot side, I don't like. So that's why I don't like Napa ankle boots.
So this might answer my next question, which is, if you fancy someone and you don't like what they're wearing, does it kill your attraction?
No, it doesn't kill my attraction to find someone very badly dressed. On the opposite, I think that if you're attracted by someone, everything which is kind of around is interesting, because if you don't like it, it means that you like something else than what they wear. So it makes you think, what do I like about that person, as I don't like the appearance? So it's just not about the appearance. It needs to be about something else. So I find it way more interesting to be attracted by someone that you don't like, really. You don't like the looks and everything, because it means that it's not the look that you're attracted to, but it's something else. And as much as that appearance means something, I like that I'm not attracted by the appearance, but I may be attracted by something else. Which reminds me of one thing a long time ago. So I used to dress up a lot, especially when I was going in clubs. And I don't remember the age I was, probably 14 or 15 years old. And then I was in a nightclub called the Palace in Paris. And this guy told me to come over him. And you know, when you're 15, anybody who wants to speak to you, you're happy because when they're by the bar, you know that you're going to have a free drink. So I was like, okay. So I go to him and he says, okay, so I saw you because I was really like a parrot, I was very visible. He said, okay, so I noticed you. So what do you have to tell me? And I looked at the guy, I said, what? He said, you want to be noticed? I notice you. So what do you want to say? And I was very offended. I was like, that's the worst way to be flirtatious to someone. Who does he think he is? And I left. But then it stayed in my mind. And I realized that it stayed really in my mind for years. Not every day, of course, but it stayed in my mind. And one day, I actually understood. I thought, okay, when you're very young, you like to be flamboyant or to be noticeable. Of course, it means something. Of course, it means that you want to be detached from the rest of people. So which probably means that you want to say something. At that age, I had no clue what I wanted to say. I still don't know, actually. But basically, it's a way to say, hey, I'm slightly different than other people around. And this is a way to engage a conversation, or this is a way that maybe people are interested by you. So the guy was just telling me, I'm interested by you. So why? Tell me what you have, which is so special that I should be interested by you. But I took it really badly. I thought, what a prick to be like that with me. And actually, after I understood that very well, I thought that was very smart. He probably was a very smart person. I should have found something to say instead of saying, who do you think you are? And
There's
left
something
thinking,
a bit shaming about how he said it to you, like challenging in a way that, I mean, I can't.
well, it was a very mature way to be with like a teenager trying to pick up a teenager in a smart way and to not to be like too cheesy, I guess. It was definitely not cheesy, but
Yeah,
I would have preferred to have it more cheesy.
definitely. I always remember that time we went for breakfast. This was probably in the 90s, and on Sunday, and we found this big cafe off the Rue de Rivoli, and there was no one in there. And we sat down and ordered a cappuccino,
I
and then
know.
this waitress, anyway, they never arrived, and we were chatting like crazy. And then when she came back and
She
we
said, you
asked
have to go.
her where it was, the coffee, and she said, you have to leave.
Yeah, I remember. I was furious.
Yeah, and then we were so angry, and then we got it up very calm, and then suddenly she was passing with a tray of drinks, and you just slapped the tray of drinks from underneath, and we ran down out and running, screaming and laughed. And I've never seen you ever angry or lose your temper, and I wondered how you do stay so even, because you often have 1,000 problems and frustrating things to deal with, as the fashion business is, famously everything goes wrong all the time. But how do you manage to not freak out?
In general, I don't know. I found a solution that it's not that important what happened. But I remember what you're talking about. We waited for hours, and then she said, you have to go. And I was like, she could have said it 30 minutes ago. So I was furious. I just didn't know what to do or what to say. I thought that there was nothing to say. The only thing is that I restrained myself to not to throw her the entire table to her face. So I got quieter and I just froze the table, but just got careful that it wouldn't affect her face or anything. But I was furious. She deserved it. Bitch.
Totally.
Bitch. I never came back to that restaurant, ever.
I always remember
I know
asking
exactly
you
where it is in the corner of my street. I never
on
came back.
on that bridge, and when I remember saying, why did you suddenly get so angry? And you said, I don't want her to think just because I'm wearing pink trousers she can push me around.
Yeah.
And it was such a sort of
It's true.
abstract reason that
It's true.
it was
She had a
great.
bit of a condescendent, like
Oh gosh, she was
this
so haughty and
little,
sneering.
this little, this little couple thinking they're on the top of the game because they wear colors. I'm going to smash them. That
Yeah.
doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Viva la color. No. She had an attitude. She had an attitude very rude. You never do that. You never do that. Sometimes it's happened that things, but you just arrive and you apologize. When you do something nasty, at least please apologize. Especially when you know that you're nasty and you do something nasty. Just be smarter or do apologize.
Oh, she definitely got
It
a
was
lot of
it was a
pleasure.
pure block of aggression what she
Yeah.
did. So she received a little part of it. But it's rare. It's rare. It's rare when I lose my temper.
You work with a team, but you design everything with Hugo, who's your right hand. And it's quite unusual these days that a designer does design everything themselves. And you draw a lot. And how do you sit down and start?
Well, it's the same thing, to work. My main work is designing, so drawing. So the first thing, it's to be an environment slightly isolated, but that I know, which is very comfortable in the sense of I don't have to look for a restaurant, I don't have to look for a place, I know where are the markers, where is the pencils, where is my razor. I know the food I'm going to have, etc. So there is no distraction around. So it's basically places where I used to go. So I go either to Rio, where I have this apartment, or I go to Portugal, or I go to Egypt for the summer collection. I go to Brittany, where I have a house for the winter collection. Kind of like this, because I'm quite affected with light and climate when I'm sketching. And then I guess it's first the pleasure of drawing. You don't necessarily need at the first second inspiration about what you're going to design. The fact to draw and to correct my lines is a big pleasure. So out of that, I start to sketch. But I always start with a white page. If I have things in mind, I put music according to those moods. Otherwise, no music is my favorite thing. And then I start sketching. And then I guess the friends that I have who are writers are call it the anguish of the white page.
Yeah.
So there is this thing, but I know because it has become a routine for 34 years now. I know that I'm kind of mushy for the first maybe half day, and then puff, it floats. And then really I sketch, and then with Hugo, we review the drawings that we've been doing the first 3 days, and then start speaking about it, and then continue again. So every 3 days we kind of do a little review and amass a certain amount of sketches, and then after 2 weeks we go back to France. And but it's the same routine. I haven't changed. The one thing that I don't have is that I can be inspired by zillions of things, but I don't work with documents. I do not bring things. For instance, when I drew the shoes inspired by the Warhol's flowers, I looked at the painting of Andy Warhol after the shoe was finished, so I was
Right.
kind of accomplished.
Yeah.
And the flower of Andy Warhol has no outlines. It's not 3 petals, it's 4 petals, it's one color. The heart is the same color. When for me, I design a 3 petals, outline a different color. The heart of the flower is another color. So it's a completely different.
Yeah.
So when you're designing, you can be inspired by things, but I think that it's better to have it without the documents of it which have been inspiring to you, because then it goes through the filter of your memory and your visual memory, which is really already a machine which has done a lot of work
Yeah.
from you to you. And then when it comes out, it's no longer a document. So this document has been chipped in here with so many other things that it comes out not as a Xerox, as a copy, but as your own thing, your own view on something,
Yeah.
your own vision view on something. So that's the thing that I do. That's my routine, is working with no documents and everything stored in my head. Sometimes a little bit of an object could be. So I start almost like a graph and start sketching and it's becoming bigger, whatever. but really small details. I could have very small things, small details that I like to really try to do the curves of those details of an element. But that's it. That's it. And I've never worked differently. Never, no, never. It's always been like that. And there is no fear. There is no fear. And if my sketches, the only thing is that I don't take, I mean, first of all, I don't take drugs in general, but I mean, I would not take drugs. Every time I've been smoking pot and drew was a disaster. I'm like for 4 hours on a sketch, and then, oh my God, this is the most beautiful sketch. And the morning after, I'm like, okay, I lost one entire day doing that pretty sketch with nothing on. But you correct, and then there is a little beep, and then you have to scratch the beep, etc. So I think, for instance, I have the feeling for musicians, part can be a kind of good isolation moment or whatever. It kind of puts you in a kind of bubble, which can be a creative bubble. But for me, to draw is a disaster. I have to be very clear.
Yeah.
I mean, not alcohol, nothing. I need to be clear.
And you collaborated with David Lynch, and he made photographs of the fetish shoes that you designed for you had an exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked two girls from the Folies Bergère to model, and there was something very pure about the photographs. I was looking at them again before you came, and they're so cool, and sort of their bodies are so contained, and then the shoes are so erotic and extraordinary. And what was it like to work with him?
It was fantastic to work with David, and it came that way. I wanted to design shoes which were not done to walk anyway, and they were really objects of desire, an object of fetishism. Fetishism is a big word. You can embrace a lot of different fetishism. So I thought, okay, I'm going to design these shoes, not to be worn, but really to be objects on the side of different aspect, fetishist aspect. So I thought there should be a light, somehow a very distinct world universe. And I thought it's definitely not a fashion photographer. It should be someone a la Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
I have this weird thing that I never really think that people would be interested to do something with me. So I would barely never ask to anyone to do something with me. That's why I do very little collaboration and thing, because I always think probably, maybe it's a fear of being rejected. So I never ask anything to anyone. So like this, I'm never rejected. I am totally conscious that I want to do something Lynch style. I know David. So I still have to ask him first. He's going to refuse, but I cannot take the risk that he's thinking, these guys that I know, we were friends, and he's been copying my works. That's pretty offensive or whatever. So, and I was conscious that I wanted something very Lynch way. The coloration, the patina of Lynch, incredible visions in photography, in light, in colors. So I thought, out of politeness, I have to ask him, then he will say no, and then I will try to find someone that I'm thinking would be a good thing. So I went, we had a drink with David, he was in Paris. And then I said, well, I have a little bit of a project I wanted to speak to you about. And I totally understand that you will say no, you can say no, but I still need to speak to you about it because I've been thinking about you. And he said, what is it about Christian? And I said, well, I have shoes that I wanted to be photographed, shoes not to be worn, but really shoes around fetishism, the ideas, the multiple ideas on fetishism. And he said, okay, let's do it.
God.
So I said, what do you mean? He said, let's do it. Where are the shoes? I said, well, they're in my head. Why? I said, because I wanted to ask you first, and if the project was kind of making sense, then I would do the shoes. He said, let's do it.
God, how wonderful.
It was as simple as that. And then he says, you have to show me the sketches. And I'm sad because I lost them. He lost them. I'm even more sad. But at least I'm not responsible. He lost them. And so I did every shoe. And then I explained the kind of category of fetishism it was belonging to. So I show him and say, okay, do the shoes. Needs to be worn on girls. You choose the girls. But one thing, no bones.
No what?
No bones.
What did you mean
I
by
say, what
that?
do you mean by bones? He says, the shoes are beautiful, but they're extreme. Me photographing these shoes, if it's on skinny girls model style, it's going to look that they come out of like a torture chamber or something horrible. So it should not be with skinny girls. I don't want to see a bone in those girls. That's the only thing.
So
No
good.
bones. I say, okay. And then I propose him 2 girls from the Crazy Horse, so great dancers from the Crazy Horse in Paris. And he immediately said yes. And the best to photograph girls where the body is going to be important, the best people are always dancers because they know how to express with their body. Model try to express with a face. It's way more complicated. They need to be very, very good to come out with something which I'm interested by. But dancers express with their entire body, and it gives way better pictures. And also, it's someone who loves Belle-Mère, who knew the work of Boninier. So there is this thing about twisted, curvy bodies and still sketched bodies that I understand where he goes, what he's liking, and where he's coming from. And on that, we have some common points. So we did those pictures for 2 days in the studio in Paris. Very little crew, one person with the light, another person holding the camera, him, and another person doing, I don't remember what. And then the makeup artist who had to go when he started to do the picture in another place. And that's it. And someone with a camera, kind of documenting more or less. And it was no one that he knew actually. And it was very interesting because without asking anything to anyone, everyone was acting. I don't know how you say in English, why do you speak like this?
Oh, in a hushed way.
Everyone was hushing, and I think that everyone had the feeling that we were living a very special moment with with an incredible human being, with an incredible character, with an incredible artist. And he needed that silence around him, and everyone was aware. You were almost like in a church. And he didn't ask anything. He never did shut up or anything, never.
Yeah.
But the respect comes with him immediately. He was always surrounded. First of all, he was such an iconic person that people are recognizable physically, that people in his presence were very, very kind of almost scared. And almost if they were seeing a kind of god or idol. And so it means that the surrounding was always very smooth. And he was a painter. He was, as many artists, actually doing something else than painting. Painting is it's a ultimate form of art. So he did paint, but his biggest development, of course, has been in movies and also in music, but definitely not in painting, even if his paintings are beautiful. So it was really interesting because, for instance, the way he was working with the light, so it was still pictures, but it was almost like a slow movie.
Yeah.
So he was having the camera, and he taught to the assistant to take the light almost like a brush. So he would have this big light, the assistant, it was heavy. and he had to brush the girl, meaning the light has, what if you were like painting someone in a nanosecond, like that. And then the moment the brush was on, he would take the picture. So that very, very, very weird light from David Lynch's movies is coming from the way he's brushing very, very, very quickly and very strongly his characters, which gives that really impactful light just to the people. And it was really impressive because it was a lot of movement. Sometimes he was taking the picture. Most of the time he was brushing with the light. Wow. So he was asking to the assistant just to click. But the most important thing was how he was brushing the person. And it gives that weird light where there is no light, but the light seems to come from inside the character, the skin of the person. So it was really very impressive. That's why also I think that people were in a kind of almost a coma.
Yeah.
No one was speaking.
It looks almost like those figures of those girls are like an apparition, all like how you've described, this luminosity comes from within them. And then there are these incredible shoes, and their naked bodies seem like so pure. And God, I mean, they're so beautiful. Have you got those photographs?
I have the photographs, yes. And, again, it's interesting how much, I've been traveling to many countries, which I'm very happy of having traveled to. And most of the time I want to go there. Once I'm there, you can be in the most beautiful landscape, in the most beautiful, in front of the most beautiful panorama. You still are starving. You have you still have, you want to have a glass of water, you want to, whatever, you have on your basic needs, basically. And you're not necessarily thinking, wow, where am I? What am I doing there? How beautiful is that? How memorable is the moment that I'm living now? It really comes after. It's almost like if I was doing things for memories, not for the moment, not for the real moment, but for the memory of that moment. I do remember those 2 days with David. It was great, it was intense, but it was just like, okay, he's asking that, Christian, what do you think? David, you decide. No, we do it together. What do you think? I said, okay, but everything was kind of smooth and easy and simple or whatever. And then it's after looking at the pictures, remembering it, that I thought, my God, I've been living in a fantastic moment with one of the most interesting person I got to meet ever in my entire life. So, but the moment I was living it seemed like a very, very normal moment. I mean, I don't remember so many moments where I was at the moment impressed by the moment I was living. It's really after that thinking, wow, that must have been impressive to live that little Christian, don't you think? And I'm thinking, yeah, it's true. Oui, c'est vrai. It was impressive. But I'm never impressed at the moment. In the moment, I kind of live the moment. It's really after I'm thinking, oh my God. And it's terrible to say, but since David died, I know I will never see him again, and it makes me very sad. Just thinking of many moments with him.
God, what an amazing experience, eh? And to have those pictures and to have the evidence of those, that time with him, and it's just.
But also, sometimes it is you would like to do something with someone, and then when, if you work with somebody else, it's not totally in your hands, which is normal. So sometimes the result is not the fantasy that you were having of working with someone and achieving something very specific that you have in your head, but which doesn't belong to you completely. Just the way the photograph we did with David is not belonging to me fully. It's his work. It's my work on his work. It's his work photographing my work. It's different. But I have to say it has been a very pure moment because it's literally what I had in my head. Not the construction, but the quality and the emotion coming out of those pictures.
Yeah. Well, you just recently described something where you said you weren't a leader, yet we all love to be in your orbit and we love to follow you. You're such a great person to lead and or for people to follow. And
Listen, I think that we are living in a moment where you can perfectly understand why you do not want to be a leader. There is nothing in me which wants to make me look like a leader. I have very little respect for the leaders that we're having now. And the role models which is proposed to us as leaders now is pretty scary.
Yeah.
So I think that I can give you this answer. I have no desire to become a leader. None. And it's not in my blood. I'm kind of shy. I don't want to outshine. I don't want to be so responsible for other people. And I think it's a lot of responsibility. When I was a child, I wanted to be an architect for a little while. And then I heard that a building collapsed and there were hundreds of people who died. I don't even remember where. And it stopped me. The second I heard that, I said, I will never be an architect. The idea of being responsible for the death of one person is killing any type of desire on me. So imagine what it means to be a leader, or imagine now what it means to be a leader. That's the worst thing I would like. That's in my worst nightmares. I would not want to be a leader.
well, instead, you're responsible for a huge amount of pleasure in the world.
But I still try to be as irresponsible as what is permitted to me.
Well, thank you so much, Christian, for being on Fashion Neurosis. You're one of my dearest friends, and I love chatting to you. I could talk to you for days, and
I have a question for you, Bella.
Oh,
What means neurosis?
I think
Is that neurotic?
yeah, I think. I mean, to be honest, I don't entirely understand, but it means a neurotic obsession with something that doesn't necessarily make any sense. Anyway, that's my interpretation.
I love the word.
There's plenty of that in the fashion business. Well, thank you, Christian.
Thank you.